Hey, it's WeatherBrains episode number 536, the pre-show, that magical time of the show where we share boring personal stories, humorous anecdotes, and occasionally say outrageous things. This is for April 25th, 2016, and boy, John Scala, he's going to be gone for a little bit. He's on a sabbatical. Nate is out with a newborn. But I think everybody else here, Rick is questionable. So
Rick's always questionable.
Did you guys see this? This is the CBS Evening News.
Oh my goodness!
No, missed that.
Look who's on the CBS Evening News. Good evening. It's our own Rick Smith.
Wonderful.
We'll have to. If he gets on here, we'll have to grill him about that. Now, the days leading up to these events are exhausting. I'm telling you, it to me, that's what wears you out. It's not the day of the event. It's the 3 days leading up to the event where you are just working social media, radio, TV, nonstop, 10 million questions. It has radically changed over the years. So I would imagine he is probably drop dead exhausted, and that's the problem. You wear yourself out, and then you got your day coming up where you got to be at your best, and so it is a challenge, but I'm sure he is totally up to it. So I only wish JB was here to watch Ginger Z on TV. I mean, she just did Nasty Boys by Janet Jackson.
Oh!
I would do anything to hear JB's commentary on Ginger Z's performance. And, of course, Ginger was here in 2000, and JB was around. In fact, I want to say JB was not able to go to the intern lunch that summer. We went to Dreamland. But he hung out. He knew Ginger, and I would just love to hear his comments on the Dancing with the Stars. But I thought she did great. I mean, goodness, she's working that thing. Wow, wore me out watching that. All right, let me see if I can get some of our guests on here. There she is. All right, I got Kim Cross invited. Brian, how'd you like that staff meeting?
Oh, it was thrilling.
Yeah, we have to go to these news department staff meetings, and it's like they never have anything pertaining to weather. It's all news, and we know absolutely nothing about journalism. I mean nothing. So we just kind of sit there with an idiot grin and act like we're paying attention. Brian was over there playing shuffleboard, I think.
Yes,
on the carpet.
I was going to have a piece of your cake, but I had to think twice.
Oh, go ahead, man. Come on. You got to go for it.
No, that chocolate condom on the top just about did it.
Show title. Wow.
I think I just swallowed a piece of my teriyaki chicken. What is that?
What in the world is he talking about?
He had a cake that looked like a television set and had rabbit ears on the top, except it looked like a chocolate condom. That's what it looked like.
Oh, gosh.
There went our PG rating with Apple.
About to say, we lost our PG rating, and you hurt the feelings of this lady that probably worked 3 days on that cake.
Her cake, I thought her cake was absolutely splendid. I just
walk it back, Brian. Walk it back.
She'll never hear that part.
No, I'm sure she won't. But.
Oh boy, it's just they've gotten picky over there. So I bring these cakes in here every day, and now if there's something not acceptable, people start griping.
Oh, see, I'm not griping. I'm not griping. I thought it was a gorgeous cake. It's just the resemblance was high.
I
Kim, know.
I apologize, Kim. I'm sorry.
Kim and I have had enough lunches. She knows.
Yeah,
That's
but
right.
she's just kind of like part of the family, I mean.
Actually, after that, Kim, you might have a spot on WeatherBrains because I think I'm going to be fired.
So, what in the world is on the floor behind you? Are those books?
They are books. I'm trying to make a sign made out of cut Reader's Digest books into letters, and so I've laid them out. And I now have to figure out how to cut them.
Okay, we won't even ask. I mean, some of
like
the
a
guests
ransom
come on
note or
here and we
something?
see some odd things in the background, but we won't even ask.
That's right. I forgot that I should clean my room.
No, it's interesting. I mean, that's that's the thing. You want something interesting back there. For years, I just had a white wall back here, and they finally put some blue things, so I don't have the white wall anymore.
I've seen your office though, and
Yeah,
you might be on my wavelength when I say that I don't totally trust people with neat desks and offices. I just don't think that they're doing anything.
my room looks like the Turkey Creek landfill, and most people don't even know where that is or what that is.
Kim, you may have seen it just after his wife cleaned it up for him.
Oh.
Yeah.
She did. She came in. She came in on a Saturday and cleaned it up for him.
Yeah, she was thoroughly disgusted and very kind to come up here. And by the way, I have a new refrigerator, Brian.
I saw it. Wow.
Hang on.
What did you do to deserve a new refrigerator?
So look at this thing. It's like big. I mean,
yes.
This is a total upgrade from the old little bitty white one.
It's almost twice as tall as the old one.
We can put all kind of stuff in there. So
I think it's wonderful.
So there you go. It's an exciting day here in the weather office.
So did you know what you did to get a new refrigerator?
Our son used to have that, and he doesn't need it anymore, and I claimed it.
Good for you.
I get all the hand-me-downs.
That's a nice hand-me-down.
All right. Hey, Jim, can you hear us?
I sure can. James, can you hear me?
Oh, yeah. Looking good. Got that good federal bandwidth. Come on, you guys got a big pipe down there. You have to admit it now.
Actually, we don't. We were one of two offices where we actually had to run outside services in. So it's getting better, but yeah, we just got off a good Facebook session with question and answers with folks. It was really good.
Okay, Facebook Live?
We did. Well, now Facebook Live, we did Q&A from that, and then we did Periscope.
Oh, okay.
6:30 to 7. Mm-hmm.
Cool.
James, did you see the headlines about Charter?
No.
They're buying Time Warner.
Wow. So what does it mean? What does it mean, Brian?
It means everybody's bandwidth is going to go down.
Yeah, that's right. This could be good or this could be bad.
Yeah, I have no idea what it means, but
we're supposed to get fiber, AT&T fiber, late this year.
At the TV station?
No, where I live.
Oh,
wow. 1 gig.
Wow, that'll be great.
That's very interesting. I can't wait to see how that works.
The thing that was interesting was how much money it was. It was very expensive.
The AT&T?
No. Charter's purchase of Time Warner.
Oh, it's all consolidating. All right, so here we are. Welcome to our television audience. See us on the TV side now. We're about to start WeatherBrains here. We're going to look back on April 27th. Who's missing, Bill?
Kevin. Kevin's missing. Nate's missing, of course, but we knew that. Rick, of course, we figured he might be. Of course, John.
But I mean, of your guests.
No. My guests were all here. All the gang's all here.
Okay. Did you say Kevin Laws is coming?
He's there, Jim.
Yeah, he left. Actually, he put in a long day as well, and he's coming back tomorrow morning early. We're kind of splitting up our day's activities tomorrow.
He's smart. He's a very smart man. Run. See, that's why this guy's the science operations officer. He knows about this show, and he got out just in time. Let's see. Who's in Huntsville, Bill?
Stephen Latimer from General
Stephen, can you hear us?
There.
Yes, I can hear everybody.
Okay, we apologize in advance. We've already had Kim and Jim on the show. They know what a rat hole this can be, so we apologize to you in advance. All right, so the gang's all here, so let's get this sucker started. We can get you guys on and off. Thank you all for taking the time to come. All right, recorder track 1, recorder track 2. And here we go in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. This is WeatherBrains episode number 536 for April 25th, 2016. This is the weekly show that's all about weather. Occasionally, I used to say this is the greatest podcast in the universe, the greatest weather podcast, only because it's the only weather podcast, but there are others being birthed. I was on one the other day, like episode number 1. I'll dig up and see what they call that. It's the Tornado Show or something like that. But hey, welcome to the podcasting party. But anyway, we've been here for like 10 years. Maybe it's our time. I don't know. Maybe.
Uh-oh.
And that's it. We're done.
Yeah, that's it.
That was a short show, folks.
I need to retire. Is on the line. Did I go away?
You went away, James.
I'm using Chrome tonight, and never use Chrome. You have to use Safari, or else it does that. It's a memory leak or something in this thing. But it's too late. I'll just stick with it anyway. Aubrey Urbanowicz is here. Aubrey is in the lovely Shenandoah Valley of Virginia. Always a beautiful place to be.
Sure is.
So what's happening in the studio?
Getting ready for the 10 o'clock news. We've got updates on the National Park fire. Been a little dry out here. Not as dry as California.
No, and and let me just say up front here, a lot of our friends in the Texas and Oklahoma, they are slightly busy. We are on a severe weather event E for them. Kevin Selly's in Wichita Falls. Rick Smith is in Norman. And in fact, let me just show this real quick for those that happen to be watching by video. So for those that are watching, check this out. Look at our guy. Here's Rick Smith on the CBS Evening News this evening. That was a screen grab. I think he put on some makeup for this, don't you guys?
He's moving up into the world.
Yeah, I think he's got on some powder, pancake, Max Factor tan number 2, and maybe a little powder on top of it.
Sounds like you speak from experience.
Yeah.
And he got a haircut recently too.
But for some people, a little paint on the barn does no good, and I'm the classic example of that. But anyway, Rick and Kevin, and I said this as we were doing the pre-show, times have really changed. To me, the most exhausting part of working a severe weather event is not the day of the event, it's the days leading up to the event. With social media, nonstop questions, the radio and the TV stuff you have to do, it's exhausting. And then by the time you get to the day, it's like you have no energy left. So I can totally understand Rick opting out tonight, but we'll totally debrief him next week. Brian Peters, I saw you like an hour ago.
Yes, we were at the same staff meeting, I hope. I think that was you. Or maybe that was just your cutout.
Yeah, the way it works in these TV stations, they have these news department meetings, and in theory, we're in the news department, so we have to go over there, and they're talking about all this journalism stuff that we don't even understand. And so Brian was over there playing shuffleboard, and I was playing Tetris on my phone during the meeting.
Yes, I'm a little behind in my rest. I had a very exciting weekend with providing weather support to a big event here in Birmingham area.
Oh, there wasn't a cloud in the sky during that whole thing. I mean, what do you mean that
you weren't
there?
It
was on Friday.
You were not there on Friday, sir. I beg to differ with you.
Yeah, okay, that storm about 1:30 went right over the track, didn't it, Brian?
It did. 1/1800ths of an inch and lightning within 2 miles.
Yeah.
So,
83,000 people at this event over the weekend, over the 3 days. That was a big.
How many?
83,000 total.
Wow.
But I was surprised. I was out there Friday, doing the weather on television.
Thursday.
Thursday. And that they were out there running, doing practice laps in the rain. I didn't think they could do that in the rain.
Oh, yes. They have different tires for the rain. There's a whole big science to all this racing stuff. But
the bottom line, yeah, you were busy Friday, but on Saturday and Sunday, admit it.
Yeah. Oh, yes.
He was riding the Ferris wheel from the Neverland Ranch.
Brian was out there collecting $20,000 a day watching the sunshine.
Right. But I also had a guest on Saturday. I had a visitor.
And who might that be?
Dr. Laura Myers came to pay a visit.
I saw her.
Wow.
She came to pay a visit.
We were walking out as she was walking in.
Yeah, she came to pay a visit and talk to the disaster preparedness guys that were there because Barber Motorsports Park has a disaster plan, a severe weather plan, a lightning plan. So they have plans for what to do to try to keep their staff and the attendees safe. So she came by to see what I was doing. So, and as you say, it was very quiet on Saturday and Sunday. So that was nice. I got to watch some of the races because the weather was quiet.
Okay,
But,
good deal.
Applaud them for paying attention to the weather.
All right, well, let's still bring in Bill Murray. We got a big show, a lot of guests on here, and big topic tonight. And by the way, we had a great show last week. Goodness, I peeked at some of the numbers, and I think it was one of our highest-rated episodes ever. We got into the storm chaser, storm spotter, weather service, tension, and if you didn't get a chance to hear last week's show, go back and listen to it. I thought it was pretty interesting, and I agree. A lot of the people that listened to the show or watched it said the best part was the end of the show, the post show. But to me, that reflects a problem we have. There's a lot of tension in these various elements of the weather enterprise, and I don't know why, but it's like everybody wants to fight. And it just seems to be a problem we have in our country, whether it's the political polarization or whatever, but it's like and I didn't even know there was a big deal whether you're named a spotter or a chaser. I don't even give them names. I mean, everybody's just trying to help, and they're all hating on each other and ready to fight. And we're going to have a big group hug and sing Kumbaya very soon. But Bill Murray bringing our guest for this week.
Yeah, James, whatever y'all did, you ran off 3 of our panelists, so we're not sure what that's about. But anyway, I hope they'll come back next week. So when we get past all the controversy, but yeah, James, obviously we had a regular guest planned tonight, but with the 5-year anniversary of the April 27, 2011 super outbreak, we thought it would be very appropriate to go back and look back. And of course, ground zero for much of that outbreak was right here in the southeast in Mississippi and Alabama into Tennessee. And it was just a horrible day. So we invited Jim Stefkovich, the meteorologist in charge here at the National Weather Service in Birmingham, who was, of course, working with his great team that day. Jim, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Bill. Glad to be here.
And we reached out to Huntsville to Chris Darden, who is the MIC there, but it was his anniversary tonight, so he had better plans, and he invited Stephen Latimer, general forecaster there at the National Weather Service in Huntsville, to join us. Stephen, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Bill. Glad to be here.
And he's running on that big pipe from the University of Alabama in Huntsville there, so he'll have good internet, James.
Yeah, these guys got the big band, the big pipes.
Yeah, exactly. And our final special guest tonight is Kim Cross, who's the author of the book What Stands in a Storm. Sits on my mantle. Obviously, the definitive book about the April 27th outbreak. And
so I have a bone to pick with Kim before she starts.
Uh-oh. Go ahead.
You ready, Kim?
Yes, I'm ready.
So I've been listening to the book. I read it, but I've been listening to it. I have an Audible.com account, which sounds like we're doing a free commercial for them. But I get like two credits a month, and of course, the minute yours came out, I downloaded it. And I don't know what it is, but it just I was driving to speak in East Alabama yesterday, and I'm sorry, back on Friday, and it just was overwhelming. It was at a time that was very intense when the bodies were being recovered, and I was just crying. I mean, this was not little tears. This was big. And all these people were racing by me on Interstate 20 looking at me like I'm crazy. I figured they got to think I just missed the forecast or something horrible went wrong here. But so I've been an emotional roller coaster thanks to you. So.
Thank you. I appreciate that. You're not alone, and I thought you were going to complain about the reader's accent because she is not from the South.
Yeah, I mean, getting Diane Sawyer to read the book, that was just a big mistake.
If you notice, the lady that read the book, she called it Bama, B-A-M-A. She thought that's Bama. She thought about the Bama Bowl. I'm thinking,
people's names, and I kind of cringed but I'm glad it wasn't too off-putting to most of the people who've listened to it. But
no, it really and for most people they wouldn't even notice that. But again, I can't thank Kim enough for putting into words this event that we really can't. I'm not a writer. I don't have my vocabulary is third grade. But anyway, I have thoroughly enjoyed listening to the book, while driving through the countryside here. So anyway,
Well,
thanks
and
again.
It's thanks to you and Brian and Jim that the book could even exist, because I didn't know a thing about tornadoes before I started. I tell everyone I started at the library checking out children's books on meteorology so that I could graduate to textbooks and actually have a decent question to ask and not waste your time. Y'all put up with me for longer than you probably wanted to, and I'm grateful for that.
But what you do, you bring to the table the human side of this story.
Absolutely.
It's very important, and you got the science right. That's the thing I tell people all the time. She got the science right, and you went to people like Jim Stefkovich and Chuck Doswell, and these, going to Chuck, that's a hard thing to do unless you know Chuck, and he can be very intimidating, but the science was right, and you got that correct, and then you got these amazing stories, the human side, and I think that's what we appreciate so much, at least I do, in that I can't really convey the stories. I feel like I know some of these people that died personally. I listened to the stories of the three that were over on the other side of DCH in Beverly Heights, Will Stevens and Lauren Brown and Danielle Downs. I've never met these people, but I feel like I know them. I feel like they're my own kids. And, it's just an amazing book. But I'm sorry, Bill. I'm getting...
No. That's what this night is about, James. So continue to do that. Everyone just share when you get the conviction to do it. But, Kim, you probably have talked to more people than anybody here on the panel about that event, except probably James. So talk about some of your most vivid stories from that day as a writer.
Well, as a writer, what struck me the most, and I found the most interesting, is that the variety of sources that were available to me as a journalist and a reporter and a storyteller are an embarrassment of riches compared to what, say, Sebastian Junger had to do his Perfect Storm with, some years ago. He had to go off recollected dialogue or, conversations recollected in interviews. And I had verbatim timestamp sources that allowed you to get into the mind of people and what they were thinking and what they were saying the minute they said it. For example, Danielle Downs, who was one of my main characters, was a college student, and her family friended me from her Facebook account, and I was able to go in and just get to know a lot about her, just the things that she laughed at, the things she posted, the things, the way she talked. But on that day, I was able to go and almost get inside her room in her head. On the morning of the morning round happened very early, and one of her posts on Facebook at 5 a.m. said, "I woke up and I thought someone had a strobe light in my room. Nah, just a bunch of lightning." And then a few minutes later, Lauren Brown, her roommate, posted, she was up too apparently, and she posted on Facebook, "Does anyone know if you can use a microwave in a storm? Because I really want some oatmeal." And Danielle, who's in the same house just down the hall, replied on Facebook instead of shouting down the hall and said, "Yeah, I think it's okay. Just stand back in case of a lightning strike or power surge." And you can hear and see their characters so much in that sweet little moment. And in the moments that got closer to the tornado hitting their house, you can see the decisions they were making in text conversations that were shared with me by the families of who recovered their phones and either sent me a picture of the phone and the text conversation or downloaded it and sent it to me that way. And you can actually hear Danielle and Will having a conversation and making plans for Will to come over to the house and watch movies. He didn't live at the house. He lived across town, and if he had stayed home, he would have been okay. So you can actually see the very moment he makes the pivotal decision that affects his future. So I found all of this really poignant, and it kind of underscored for me how they did the right thing. They got in their safe place. They were surrounded by pillows. They were paying attention to the weather. They they did everything right, and they didn't make it. And it underscores how much chance plays a part, I think, in weather events like these. Of course, getting in a safe place can help your chances, but I don't know. I was really touched by all of those little details that I was able to see that really weren't available some years ago.
So James, you always talk about in your talks now about April 27th. There was a certain percentage of people that did all the right things and still died. Talk about that number, James.
Well, I've said, in my opinion, the death toll that day should have been 30. And in our state, to the best of our knowledge, and I'm not so sure you can quantify this number, but to the best of our knowledge, the death toll was 252. 30 people, the death toll should have been 30. 30 people did the right thing. It's like Will Stevens, Lauren Brown, and Danielle Downs. They heard the warning. They got into the safest place they could possibly get into, and everything they did, and yet their life was still taken that day. I think there are about 30 instances of that, but for 222 people, I think that they should be with us today. What our colleagues at the Weather Service offices in Huntsville and Birmingham did were astounding that day. The physical science was so good. It was unbelievably good. And what we've learned is that it's true. We know more about physics than human behavior. And, you know, that's when we realize we've got to do something. And you know, the loss of 30 people, that is a horrible tragedy, just horrible. But 222 people were found, their bodies were found within safe places, and I don't know. And I'm still reeling from this, and I think we all are, but we've learned a lot, Bill. We've learned a lot from the social science people, and again, talking with people about what went right, what went wrong, and I think we've all made progress in the weather enterprise on making it better. And the next time we have a day like that, I'll be at the cemetery. But we're going to have a bunch of severe weather days every year, and we can take the knowledge we've learned and used it on the routine days.
So James, talk about that for a minute. You just touched on it. How do you think we're better at it than we were 5 years ago?
Well, you know, obviously one big problem, and I'll let our two colleagues with the Weather Service talk about this, is the false alarm ratio. And I cannot tell you how unbelievably strong the Birmingham office reacted in taking the FAR from 80. What is it, Jim? What is it right now for this year? It's unbelievably low.
I think we're about 25% for this year so far.
I want you to hear what he just said. So we were at 80% in 2011, and so far this year it's 25%. That is remarkable. And Jim, let me just ask you, and if you and I kind of know the story, and Kevin's not here, but how in the world were you able to accomplish that remarkable improvement in reducing the FAR?
Well, I used to have black hair, and now it's all gray. But aside, well, you know, we took to heart. There was a lot of question that we, through social science, found out that false alarm rate could have been a contributing factor, but we just thought we could do better, regardless of the reasons of what happened. So we really took a two-pronged approach. We both took a scientific approach. We had a couple of Hollings students come in, and we looked at, 150 events and 70 meteorological parameters, and I think we've just scratched the surface. But to find out some things of when tornadoes occurred and when they didn't occur, and just a really quick example is that we issued a lot of warnings with the LCL height of 3,000 feet or above, and what we found out is that you really need your LCLs where your base of your clouds form at 1,000 feet or less. So that was just one thing we looked at. Then the other side that we have worked very hard on is basically just a new philosophy. And I know I was of the philosophy, because we've had some budgetary issues and things going on, we tended to put people in different chairs in severe weather positions to gain experience. And I did that as an MIC, meteorologist in charge, and I don't like that approach anymore. What we do is we basically put the best people in the best positions at all time. And I like to make the baseball analogy. This isn't golf, okay? It's not the radar operator who is doing everything. It's a total team approach. So I like to take the baseball approach, but you don't take Derek Jeter, who played shortstop for a lot of years, a Hall of Famer as a Yankee, and make him the catcher. Now, if he has to be a catcher, worst case scenario, sure, we'll do that. But basically, we've taken a philosophy here that if somebody is excellent at social media, if somebody's great at radar, if somebody's a great coordinator, if somebody needs to get the grids updated and do our TAFs and all that, that's the position that they need to be in for every single severe weather event, whether it's a marginal risk or a high risk.
That's outstanding, Jim. That's an amazing testament to your office and adapting to what happened. So, Stephen, talk about your office in Huntsville, things that you guys took away from April 27th and incorporated in your routine.
Well, some of the things that we did incorporate, I think, was especially the research that we had been doing for high shear low CAPE events I think that has really become apparent with the number of tornadoes we have with those type of events. Typically, is much higher than what we typically would get with those deadly tornadic supercells that we're moving across. So in that regard, we've actually been able to reduce the false alarm rate and actually look at recognizing the features that would be a precursor to those type of events. Still pretty early in the science in terms of research, and that's one of the actual questions that the Vortex Southeast project is exploring right now. But it's really something that I think we took away here from that event was looking at those events even more. Even though they weren't the high fatality ones, we still had quite a few fatalities that were occurring due to time of night. Those occurred really early in the morning. What are people doing? What's their warning system early in the morning? If it's their cell phone, how's that going to help them? And one of the things I think we were not yet on social media when that event occurred. And that was a big one. We were wanting to get onto it, but we were not quite there yet. We came on board, I think it was about a matter of a couple of weeks or 3 weeks later after that event. Another thing that we learned was to make sure that we keep food stocked. We were without electricity for a number of days, so that was just one of the big impacts from us, making sure that we keep everything be prepared for events like that, so that if we do lose electricity, that we have a way of, basically keeping going, even if we do have generator power, but having places for to refuel, to do all the things that we need to do storm survey wise. It's very difficult to do that during that time frame, but those are a lot of the things that we've learned.
So, talk for a minute. You mentioned high shear and low CAPE events there. Talk about the differences in the types of shear and how that's important. Kevin's asking that question, but he's on the set there in Wichita Falls and can't ask it. So he's asking you to break that down for the listeners a little bit, Stephen.
Sure. It's one of those things we call them high shear, low CAPE, or you might have even heard QLCS. That's quasi-linear convective system, or you can think of it as a squall line. So it's a linear type of feature that's moving across, and we can actually get tornadoes out of those, and pretty much the highest number of tornadoes we get in this area is actually from those type of tornadoes. But they're so short-lived, they can actually occur in between our radar scans. Our radar scans maybe 4.5, 5 minutes, where that's the amount of time it takes for the radar to do the full volume all the way up and all the way around. It can happen in between those volume scans, and so you can almost miss it or completely miss it, have high false alarm rate, or we have a low probability of detection if we don't get a warning out, or we have zero lead time, not have any lead time, not give people enough warning for it. So those are the type of events that are actually a matter of research, have been for a while, but it's become more intense. Due to the high number of tornadoes that are occurring with those. They tend to be on the weaker end. They're more of the EF0 to about EF2 is about as strong as they get. Maybe EF3, but those are very rare. But those still do a lot of damage, and they can occur overnight, and if people aren't awake for it, then, if they're in a trailer, if they're in some sort of structure that's not very safe, then they can actually end up even being injured or killed. And that's some of what happened on April 27th. Outside of the major tornadic supercells that were moving across.
So talk about the differences between speed and directional shear and why those are important in forecasting severe thunderstorms, Steve.
Oh, that's a great question. One of the things that we look at when we're looking for severe weather ingredients, when we're looking at what kind of storm mode, and so that's you got squall lines, or you got the linear features or the supercells. With supercells, they tend to require more directional shear. So that is where you're going to have winds coming from, say, the south at the surface, and say up where the cloud heights are, you might have them coming from the southwest or even to the west, even higher than that. If you have that type of directional shear, it's going to mean a greater propensity for a tornado to occur with a supercell. If you have speed, what's called speed shear, where the direction doesn't change much at all with height, and that could actually lead to more of a squall line type feature. Now the speeds can be different types of speeds, but if you're getting up into probably about 40 to maybe 60 miles an hour, that type of shear, those are the values that we're probably looking at. And if it goes even higher than that, if it goes higher up into the 80s, or even higher than that, you're probably going to get more of a linear feature. If it gets into that more of that 50 to 70 mile an hour time frame, or even a little bit, maybe a little bit lower, you might actually get a tornado out of a supercell, but you don't want too much shear with those. So I hope that kind of answers that question, but it is an important one because that does determine the storm mode, whether it's going to be a line, whether it's going to be a supercell, or we call them multi-cell clusters, or all kinds of different storm modes that we can get. That's one of the ingredients for it.
So, Stephen, you were you were working that day in Huntsville, I suppose. Talk about that day, what it was like.
Well, I'll back up a couple days before. I know James Spann mentioned this, how a lot of the work has become the run-up to the event. We saw this coming a few days out, and it was quite, I would say a little anxiety when we start seeing those ingredients coming together for something like this. Might be the emotion you have, or some other emotions, but we start seeing this type of event occurring. I was working midnight shifts during that event, and I was the one doing the forecast, so I was having to put all the details in of what I was seeing. I was hoping what I was forecasting would be wrong. That's where I was getting at towards closer and closer we got, that Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, when I had to put out that last area forecast discussion basically before the event started. When I saw that pretty much what was happening to our west, it was coming, and it looked like the environment was shaping up to actually have a third wave of severe weather. We were only really forecasting two, one in the morning, a QLCS or a line, and then one in the afternoon, the supercells. What ended up happening is we had an even earlier morning one, and then we had a late morning one, and then we had the supercells. And so to have something like that with multiple waves of tornadoes possible, from the human aspect, really it makes you kind of cringe up because you really don't want it to happen, but you know it's about to. And that's one of the things that we had to grapple with here. I actually did the forecast that final morning, Wednesday morning, April 27th, did the forecast, and then I got on the radar because, as Jim mentioned, that we want to have the best people on radar. I had already done a lot of research with QLCS. They wanted me to watch those storms because I knew the precursors. We hadn't quite got everybody trained up on what to look for, and then I started issuing warnings. So that's kind of how my morning went, and then that was the end of the first wave. And then I had to brief the day shift on what was about to happen, still in disbelief that the environment would recover by the afternoon to have supercells occurring. That was probably one of the biggest things that just blew my mind, that the environment was going to recover that well, and then with successive waves of severe weather. So it was rather lengthy, but that's pretty much what was going through our minds, or my mind especially.
So Jim, talk about that day from BMX Step. What was it like in the office as all this was unfolding?
By the way, Jim, you have to unmute. I'm sorry.
Sorry.
Jim, it's up there on the top of the window. You've got a little mute microphone button, and you should click that, and it'll come right back up.
My apologies.
There you go.
There we go. All right. Thank you, guys. Backing up, and what I think a lot of people don't realize, too, is that we had just gone through the state of Alabama, that is, our all-time record tornado outbreak on the 15th of April, where we had 45 tornadoes. And so that primarily affected Birmingham and Mobile's county warning areas. So we had pretty much just wrapped up a few days before the 27th all the damage surveys. And what a lot of people may not know is that guys like Steve and all of our offices, it's just not preparing people for what's going to come, then the event, but it's also the days and weeks afterwards of doing the damage surveys, of tracking all the tornadoes and all that information goes out. So we had just completed that, caught our breath, and then I remember for me personally, about 2 days before the event, I got physically ill because I was looking at all the parameters, and I've worked in 7 states. I was, like Brian, he was the first WCM, warning coordination meteorologist in Birmingham. I was the first WCM in Fort Worth. So I've seen lots of tornadoes, violent tornadoes, a lot of damage, but I couldn't believe that this was going to unfold like it was. So my role was to be the coordinator for the afternoon wave. And so I was due to come in around noon because I knew I was going to be there late. But I started getting phone calls from State Emergency Management, Governor's Office, media requests. And so I had looked at some stuff, and I thought, no, this just can't be. Because I was like Steve, I was hoping maybe the atmosphere won't recover. Called the office and said, I just need to know, is it really going to recover? And the answer was, unfortunately, yeah. And so we started doing a bunch of briefings. We were watching what was going on in Huntsville for the second wave. It didn't affect our area. And then when the storm started in eastern Mississippi and started rolling into western Alabama, we just knew. And I think the toughest part was when we were actually looking at sky cams from the TV stations, including ABC, and seeing that wedge going across Tuscaloosa. It became very emotional. A couple of folks just were overcome with emotion. We kind of moved them out of position for a little bit, and they came back within a couple minutes, and they did great. It was one of the few events in my career where it was like everybody knew how serious it was. It was just like there was nothing extracurricular. Sometimes you'll chat or kind of talk about different things related to weather, but everybody was just so focused on the role that we just hit it hard. And then as the event kind of went a little bit further, as one of the storms, supercells came out of Bibb County towards Shelby County, where our office is, it was coming right for us. So we had to take shelter in our safe room, which is 8 inches of concrete reinforced with a steel door. And we had already put Atlanta on a notification of backup, which they took over instantaneously. They actually issued a tornado warning for us. We waited about 10 minutes till the storm had passed, and then we went right back out and went back to work. So, it was gut-wrenching. Kim and I have talked. Kim, it's good to see you again. We actually have done a co-presentation together in Mobile. But it was, we have 5 staff members who are born and raised in Alabama. A number of us, I've been here at that point since 2005, but a lot of folks have been here at least 10 to 15 years. So, we live here in Alabama, and we just knew how serious it was. And it was really hard. And the days afterwards were just incredibly hard to see that much damage. We did all the plots, and this is one of our talking points. If you took all the tracks of all the tornadoes that went through Alabama, no matter where they started or ended, if they touched Alabama, you put them all together, the total track length was about 1,200 miles. That's driving from Birmingham to Boston. That's how much tornado damage went through the state. And, and including, I have a couple of stats, including 9 out of the 36 EF4s or 5s that have occurred in the state since 1950. So, you had, 25% or so of the tornadoes, of violent tornadoes in one day. So, we ended up with 109 tornadoes in the state of Alabama in April of 2011. That, to this date, since 1950, still breaks the all-time record for the yearly amount of tornadoes. Mm-hmm. So it was just horrible. And now what we're doing today is we're doing Facebook sessions, we're on Periscope, we're tweeting out a lot because this is a chance to help educate. And I think a great example, we're looking at that tornado that went really near the Tuscaloosa University of Alabama campus. Well, that's a small city. Alabama has, over 40,000 students. And Bill, I think you should share the story about your son. That was riveting to me. It broke my heart when you told me. But that's a brand new city right now. You got a completely brand new city at Alabama because all those students are gone for the most part. And so we got to start the education process all over again.
Well, that is an amazing story, because when that tornado, when that rear flank downdraft came around on the Skycam, and you saw this wedge tornado moving into Tuscaloosa, and you can hear James, you're covering the weather. Your job is to blog. Your job is to get the warnings out. And, we felt like we were doing a good job with that. And then you look up and you see that this tornado is probably going to kill your child, because, at that point, I had talked to him several times, had him on the phone just to make sure that we knew what was going on. He was in the right place, in a house off Hackberry Lane. But if that tornado had been 2 blocks to the north, I would have been going down to Tuscaloosa that night with a body bag. And when you watch that, it is extremely moving. Now, I was lucky to have him on the phone and to know what was going on and to hear that he was okay, because that was my moment that I could then go on and continue to do, because we never broke stride, continuing to issue warnings. So we had over, 150 blog posts that day, just getting information out about the weather. So, I was one of the lucky ones. There were a lot of people that weren't lucky.
Hey, Jim, Steve mentioned that they did not have social media accounts in 2011. Did you in Birmingham then?
No, because Facebook was still going through the process of approval, and it was, we didn't have it. But I think since that time, and Steve talked about some things, I think one of the things we had to, we found out for social science, is that me, Bill, or is that you?
I'm hearing a high-pitched squeal.
Yeah.
I think it's me.
Yeah, it's Bill. Bill's his audio was shot.
There we go. What we found, I think, James, and you've been there, we started the integrated warning teams, and that's across the Weather Service. And we found out that people needed at least 3 to 4 tornado warning confirmations before they took action. So I think because of social media, and we're reposting our warnings, and blogs are going out, and we're retweeting, that now emergency management, media, Weather Service are consistently providing the same message. Not that we weren't before, but I think the consistent message is going out much more quickly now, and I think people are getting the information faster.
Kim, what role does social media play from those that you talk to, the actual people that went through this thing?
Well, I actually have a personal story. I remember sitting in my living room with my son, who's 4 at the time, and my husband, watching on our TV. We were watching you, and the EF4 was coming through Tuscaloosa, where we had lived, and we watched it, thinking, oh my gosh, people are dying. And then we watched it come up towards our house in Birmingham, and at some point, as it looked like it was on track to hit our house, our power died. And I remember being fairly new to Twitter myself, but I remember that you were a Twitter user, and I went and I looked you up on Twitter, and you tweeted the link to the live stream footage. And I don't know that I could have found my way to that, but we went to our laundry room, which is our safe place, and we sat in the dark. We put tornado helmets on, and we watched on my phone. We watched, your coverage, and at some point you called out our neighborhood, and so. I share that to say, like, if I don't know how much time I might have wasted if you hadn't tweeted that link, and we felt like we weren't left in the dark, so to speak, because we had that access on our phone, and I think that was a game changer in the storm. And then, after the fact, it seemed like social media really helped people connect, put the word out there for what they needed help with, and then people, you were retweeting, people were using your Facebook page as a place to post, like, hey, we're over here and we need this, and then someone would come on and say, okay, well, I'm on the way. And I heard that the Red Cross at some point was monitoring your Facebook page to figure out what the needs were. So I think, to me at least, social media played such a big role in this storm, both in the warnings and in the aftermath. People, I think, you couldn't get a phone call to go through, but you could get a tweet or you could get a text to go through. And then, afterwards, so many people, this probably was the most filmed storm when it comes to, people whipping out their cameras and filming it. And if you go on YouTube, there are just hundreds and hundreds of videos, and I use those as a writer to try to, be there. But I was wondering, is this the first storm where social media played this much of a part, or did this happen before and we just noticed it because it was so
I think there's no doubt, at least where we are, Kim, that this was the one event that really put social media in a position to where it was very useful. And for me, the most amazing thing was not necessarily that day, and I do know that day, April 27th, a lot of people got the message from Twitter or Facebook. I think I had about 25,000 followers back then, and there are some people that are walking around today because of the use of social media. Younger people don't use traditional television, and we could drive them to the live stream where they could watch on their phones. But the other thing, too, in the days after the event, you know, for years and years, when the event was over, we were done. We handed off to news. We can go get off the grid and decompress. That never happened with me because all these people started sending me all this information via Twitter, urgent requests for help. I mean, urgent. You can go back and look at my Twitter feed from that day and the following days. And all I knew what to do was to retweet. I became like a modern town crier, knowing that emergency officials were monitoring that stream and people with the state and the Red Cross, people that could help them. And these were serious needs, very serious needs. So for days and days and days, I'd be on that phone, you know, retweet, and using the Facebook thing. And I think in a way that was not very healthy for me because everybody needs to decompress. And I was going to ask Steve and Jim, I think you guys had the same problem. You weren't working social media. You guys had to do 62 damage surveys, and how horrible was that?
Go ahead, Steve.
I would just say, after working that midnight shift, and just on a personal note, I had to go survey Phil Campbell. Phil Campbell basically had the EF5 damage. Later it was classified EF5. From a standpoint of all those surveys we had to do, we tried to attack the worst ones first. We sent out 4 teams initially that first day, which is April 28th. We had no way to we could not send out survey teams the very day, or the same day as April 27th, which made our storm surveys much more difficult later because we had to go find which tornado track goes with which episode. Was it the QLCS? Was it the supercell? It was the greatest puzzle I think we've ever had to face because we ended up having so many tornadoes from the first event and the second event, and then we had the third event, supercell tornadoes. We had to go map all those out, and so it took us, I think, all the way until mid-June before we got all of the tornadoes surveyed that we could find. And I think Marshall County had the most. I think they had something like 11 that were from the first wave. So from a standpoint of just manpower needed, I think we were requesting help from other offices to come help us do this, Southern Region Headquarters, because we just had so many tornadoes to survey, and we were without power for 6 days, and we had somebody out on maternity leave. I think we actually did have a forecaster had a baby on April 27th, so it was staggering the number of tornado tracks we had to go see, plus just the other devastation that we were seeing on those main tracks we started off with. So, from an emotional standpoint, we didn't really get time to decompress either. We just went the next day and started going through all this, and so I think for the next 2-3 weeks, some of us were out there for hours on end. Really didn't have time to just really process all of this information and then get it up to you guys to let the first responders know, or not the first responders, but those that are doing the state declarations, all those type of, the media calling. And when we barely even have electricity, it made it that much more important that we had that 800 megahertz system that the state of Alabama had to communicate, because they had so many volunteers. We had to, in all these counties, we had to pretty much alert all the counties if there was even some sprinkles coming around, any kind of winds, any kind of little bitty thunderstorms. And the days after, weeks after, we had to let them know as soon as possible and as much time in advance, many days in advance. Hey, we have a slight chance of thunderstorms in the forecast 3 days out, and they're like, thank you, because we need to know that for, because we got volunteers out here. We've got people that all they've got left is a concrete slab, and they're living on in a tent, trying to clean up. So, from our standpoint, I mean, we really never had. It took a while for us to decompress.
Jim described the Birmingham. I'm getting feedback from somebody's channel here. Jim, if you would unmute and describe what it was like for your team in the days and weeks doing all these storm surveys.
Yeah, so for me personally, the next day I drove to Tuscaloosa. Got off of McFarland, and I did an interview with the Weather Channel, and I just remember walking down. It was a scene from The Walking Dead. If you're a fan of that show or ever watched it, the smell of natural gas in the air, and I think it was on 15th Street, and then just everybody was just walking around in a daze. So from there, I got the national media done. There was a press conference, I think with the governor's office, and then headed back. And then we called in, like Steve's office did, we called in people from across southern region, brought them in because we really our folks wanted to go out and do the damage surveys. We know the area, our county warning area, so we basically had 3 to 4 teams for about 4 weeks. Also, because of the interest, at that point, the Weather Service really wasn't putting any tornado tracks into GIS format. And so Gary Goggins, one of our forecasters here, who knows about GIS back then, he went to working with the state EMA, and we actually put all the tracks into GIS format. That took a lot of time. It was new, and so we're getting it. And I think because of that, now a lot of the Weather Service is now using GIS to put their tornado data in. So there can be a certain point where we actually brought in a crisis counselor to talk with us, to kind of talk about the feelings, emotions that we were going through. It was very good. She met with us as a group. We talked about it, and then she used my office, including myself, met one-on-one. It was very good to know what the signs of post-traumatic stress are and how to deal with it in healthy ways and those kinds of things. So for me, it was like you get the job done, you push through it, but there was just one point, it's probably the second day afterwards, my daughter had just started her freshman year in college, and I read an article blog by Brian Williams about, he was staying in a hotel of one of the hotels where a student, female, had been killed. And with my daughter just starting college, I mean, I closed my door and just broke down and just wept, and because that could have been my daughter, and it was obviously someone's daughter, and so it's still somber. I really appreciate being on tonight. I still don't enjoy talking about it. I'm just being honest with you, but if there's a chance to save somebody in the future, it's worth it.
Kim, I think a lot of people maybe look at Jim and Steve and me and Bill and Brian. We were all in the middle of this thing and don't understand the emotional connection we have with it. And you put it into words. Are you emotionally attached to this day yourself after writing these stories of these families that lost loved ones?
Oh, absolutely. I'm not sure what I'm going to do on Wednesday. I was thinking about driving down and visiting the house where, they have rebuilt the house in 31 Beverly Heights, and they planted trees in memory of Danielle and Will and Lauren. And when, from time to time, I drive by their tree, and, Terry Downs, Danielle's mother, they're Catholic, and she will go to the Shrine of the Most Blessed Sacrament and get holy water and take it down and pour water on her tree. And I had a really special moment with Terry where, so I didn't grow up Catholic, but I have an aunt who's Catholic, and 25 years ago, she went to Fatima and she brought me home this little shampoo bottle of holy water, and I've been carrying it around for 25 years. And finally, I realized that I had been carrying it around so I could give it to Terry because I knew it would be really meaningful for her. And so we went and we poured it on Danielle's tree. But you know, these families, it's really hard as a writer to approach a family who's lost a child and ask them to relive the worst day of their lives. And, you know, having to ask that was the worst part of what I had to do to write the book. But the best part of what I had to do came from everything that followed, just the time we spent together, how I got to learn about their kids, just the love and resilience and continual grief that they shared with me. Touched me so deeply. I feel like I think about these kids probably every day. I don't think a day goes by that I don't. And like on last year when my book came out, my mom got me this little Joan of Arc pendant that, if you remember from the book, that's what Danielle wore, and that's what Michelle used to identify her body. And my mom engraved Danielle's name and her birth date and death date on the back. And I almost always wear it. And I still keep in touch with these families, and I try to remind myself, you know, all the book stuff and what, you know, it's really about the people, and I don't ever want to forget that. You know, they won't ever stop grieving, and we can't ever forget, you know, what's at stake here, and it's the people. So I don't know if did you all Google the kids? I wanted to show you. That's Lauren.
I had some pictures too, but you go ahead and show yours. In fact, on my screen, I've got a picture of Danielle, but you go ahead and show yours too.
Yeah, so you know that's. I'm sorry, it's kind of hard to show in front of the computer, but you know, I knew people would Google them, but you know, I keep their pictures pretty close by, and I don't know. One thing I share with people is before the book went to press, I wanted to fact check everything, and y'all helped with the science. Chuck Doswell helped with the science, and I have a funny Chuck story for later if you want. But but with the families, I sat down and I had a private reading with each family, and I read to them every word of every chapter in which their kid appeared, and we all kind of we cried the ugly cry together, and it was a big, great cathartic moment that kind of closed that loop of trust that began with me asking them to share their stories. And, you know, I guess I'll never forget that, and the courage that it took for them to relive that day. You know, they post on social media, you know, they're anticipating this day, and then, you know, every year they brace themselves for it, and it never really gets easier. And gosh, you know, we can move on, we can rebuild, we can sort of heal from our PTSD, but their kids won't ever come back. And, you know, I can't imagine anything worse than that, you know.
And let me just say this too, for those that are watching on the screen now, you are seeing the parents of Ashley Harrison. Ashley was 2 weeks away from graduating college. She was from Dallas, and that's her parents accepting her diploma at the graduation that was rescheduled for August. And I hope that everybody in the Weather Enterprise can see the pain in Mrs. Harrison's eyes. It is visceral. You can feel it. And when I stand out there in front of that green wall now, I think about Mrs. Harrison. And again, that pain, it's something that we can feel, and it's something that drives me. And again, I never knew these students, but when I look at Danielle Downs, this is why we have to get better. This is why we have to work harder. And as you read about these people in Kim's book, these were precious kids. Will Stevens, he played baseball for Stillman College, which is in Tuscaloosa, and he was about to graduate. And Lauren Brown, same thing. She was so close to graduation, and they were taken just like this. So I'm thankful to you, Kim, for putting the human face, the human side on this, because we are so guilty in the Weather Enterprise. We'll sit around these stinking conferences, we sit around the tables, and nothing ever happens. We talk about this stuff, nothing ever happens. But I think some progress has been made, you know, with the FAR coming down, and we've met all the local weather people in my market. We got together at Jim's office and talked about using the same colors. and the same call to action statements to make it less confusing. So some good things have come out of this horrible situation. And Bill, I think you're back now, so you take it back. Your audio is good now.
Yeah, James, talk for a minute about how you do things differently now as a result of April 27th.
Well, yeah, I think that I'm bolder on the air, not in a way to, start jumping up and down and screaming, but I think I'm a little bolder when I need to be. The haters don't bother me as much as they used to, because, again, like we had to cut off Grey's Anatomy the other night. And, the first, email, you should have been aborted by a coat hanger, whatever, all this kind of stuff I get. That stuff doesn't bother me because I can see faces like Danielle Downs and Lauren Brown and Will Stevens and Mrs. Harrison. That's all I see. I don't see these haters. So that is really, and the haters are going to hate that because they can't really affect me anymore. But that stuff is faded away, and I think I've tried to put an urgency on this kind of thing and think about things that where maybe Will and Lauren and Danielle could have done something else to protect themselves. And I think of the 252 people that died and how precious they were, and maybe go through some things that I didn't go through. Here's the biggest problem I had, I think, on the 27th. I was very guilty of not communicating the third part of the warning process. Getting the warning, fine. Knowing where you're going, fine. But having that kit of stuff, helmets and whistles and air horns and hard sole shoes. I didn't even mention that the whole time. If you go back and watch the coverage on YouTube, I didn't mention that one time. And I guarantee you we'd have some alive today if they would have had helmets on and things like that. And that's where I think I'm better, is focusing on the actual impact instead of maybe the science. But Jim and Steve, what do you say about what are y'all doing? Any difference when you're working a warning shift there at the Weather Service?
Well, and James, you brought up the impact-based warnings. That's been new. That's been implemented nationwide, where there's very specific information to go there. And you're exactly correct. I didn't have helmets in my own home, in case of severe weather for my family. I do now. And again, shoes and knowing where to meet and all that, that's a big part. But I want to take a different track for a second with you, James, because I know we've had a conversation about. This has nothing to do with the folks from April 2011, but we've all talked about the struck without warning, right? And the whole thing that's occurred there. Well, we got some research from social scientists, part of the Vortex, Southeast. Now, this is a very limited size, I just want to read this to you. But this is a social scientist that came to Kevin Laws and presented the following. A sample size of 7 people with a bachelor's or master's of science degree from college. They were given a blank map, and they were asked to label the location of their home, work, church, and children's school. 4 out of the 7 could not label their home county or any surrounding county. Once they were told what their home county was, 6 of 7 could not label the location of their home, work, or child's school within that county. After 34 years, that's what frustrates me the most. You can put out the best warning, reduce the false alarm rate, but if people don't even know where they're at, wow, what do we do about that?
Right, and I am very guilty of this. I get so frustrated on Facebook because of the questions that are coming in, and most of us would consider them just stupid. We get frustrated and we just finally don't answer those. And the truth is, Jim, a lot of people can't find their place on a map, and they can't understand the blog. And I think it's my duty to get past the frustration and just answer the questions without being judgmental. We do have a lot of families in this state where maybe they don't have the highest education. And we have a lot of families that are lower income and they don't have opportunities. And just because they don't make a lot of money, or maybe they can't read well, or they're not geography people, their life is important too. And I totally agree. I mean, that's something we have to think about. Steve, what do you say? And you're muted. I'm sorry. Hit that unmute button.
There you go.
Good.
Yeah, I agree with Jim. I mean, you get those warnings out, you do all this work, and yet we're still having people not taking any action. And I think that's one of the things that continues to be a frustration that I'd say we have. We're trying to get our message out in so many different mediums, all the way from the basic one, the old weather radio. I mean, that's the oldest one I think we have. all the way to now we're in social media putting warnings out on social media. Okay, how is this helping? Is this helping people take action? Do they even know, say we issue I'm not a flash flood warning. We still have people driving into water-covered roadways even though we issue a flash flood warning because they believe it is more important to go through that water-covered roadway to get to their son because their son's scared. Okay, how do we deal with that? How do we deal with the fact that the parent is scared for their kid, that they're going to go ahead and go through that water-covered roadway and possibly kill themselves doing it? There's something that I think we're perhaps need to engage the social scientist on that too. Okay, what can we do to help that? Can we help that? When we're talking about responses and warnings, or how much lead time do they need to take action? Do they need days? Are they going to be engaged 3 hours prior to the event on social media? Are they going to be engaged in any kind of medium? We're communicating all this information. Are they going to understand it? And yes, are they even going to understand if they've got a picture of a map and they've got a warning polygon? Do they know if they're inside the polygon or outside the polygon? Do they know, if the tornado sirens go off for the whole county and they don't get hit at all for like 5 or 6 warnings that go across, they're going to turn everything off because they're tired of it. How do you overcome that? I mean, those are some of the things that I think are in the next phase of what we need to look at. And I think we're headed in that direction. But from our standpoint, I agree with Jim on that. That's one of the things that has come out, I think, of in regards to April 27th as to how people react to the warnings we're issuing. And even if we do issue a warning, honestly, sometimes we just can't help. They've got to make a decision. It's ultimately their responsibility. And if we've got an EF5 headed towards an area, I would have to say perhaps we need to look at people getting out of the way of it or hoping that they have a tornado shelter somewhere in the ground, because really getting to the interior of a house isn't going to help you with an EF5.
I think the key to all this is we've got to be on the same page, because if they hear you in Huntsville say that, you got to drive out of the way, and then the guys in Birmingham are saying being in a small room near the center, away from windows, lowest floor, and then some TV guy says you got to be underground to survive. That's where it gets baffling. And some of the stuff going on is just insane now in some markets where every TV station's doing different stuff. There's some markets now where TV guys are doing their own warnings. I'm not going to say who they are here, but we know that that's going on. And you got all these TORCons and DEFCONs and everything. It's like horses out of the barn here. But let me take a quick pause here. Kevin is here. Kevin, welcome.
How are y'all?
Good. So what I thought we'd do while Kevin is here, and we've got a second, I'm going to do things out of order. I want to do a weather roundup because we have a big day tomorrow.
When the weather ball is red, warmer weather is ahead. When the weather ball is white, colder weather is in sight. When the weather ball is green, no change in the weather is foreseen. When colors blink by night or day, precipitation's on the way.
So, again, this is April 25th, and Kevin, are you going to be on which side of the dry line are you on for this thing tomorrow?
Looks like we're on the east side to start, but we're going to have to see where that sets up and then how quickly things move away from us. We're on the western periphery of the higher risk area, but that dry line position is going to be the key. I can't tell. I've said it a number of times on TV, but I can't tell you the number of times I have quoted you, James, where people are looking at me and wanting a specific answer, and I go back to your quote of you can look at the computer models as all you want for only so long, and eventually you have to look out the window. And so we're in that zone where we're about to start looking out the window, and everybody just has to be patient about that, and we'll get through it, of course. Now, on a lighter side, I've been watching and listening, and I don't want to play to the video, but I'm very confused as to what's going on the floor behind Kim. There's some organization of books here. Is this
the next book may be forming back there.
I'm a little confused.
Just books. Books everywhere. I like his words in books.
Well, they seem to be somewhat organized, so I thought, well, there must be some message that you're signaling to us.
They're actually, I'm going to cut them into letters once I figure out a saw that will Do that.
Okay, well, everybody can go watch the video. I was curious about that, but this is obviously pretty heavy stuff. What in the last couple of minutes, what I'm really waiting for is, I think there's a bridge that hasn't been built yet between the social science people, because those of us who are paying attention, James keeps mentioning it, I'm listening to, I'm trying to get it to pay attention to it. There's this bridge that has to happen between them and then what's going on the consulting side and the broadcasting side, where I think those goals are somewhat at odds. And this is where we get to these severe weather alert days and where we're getting all this stuff on social media, and there's a fatigue that sets in on this stuff. And then you get into this cry wolf. And the article, I tweeted it the other day, I don't know where else it's been seen, but it has quotes from Rick and Kim Klokow. And this is really good stuff in that, okay, well, how far out do we say bad things are going to happen? And Kim seems to suggest, the ideal warning time for somebody is maybe only 10 to 15 minutes. And it's not beat on them for hours and hours and hours, but then we got these yahoos from the consulting firms, and I get what they're trying to do. They're trying to drum up some anxiety. They're trying to get you to tune in and stay longer with these severe weather alert days. But you get into a fatigue setup and a cry wolf setup, and I'm waiting for this bridge to come between those folks and the social sciences people, and I hope it comes sooner rather than later.
I was going to show you guys, let me do a screen share real quick. So this is something we're seeing now. And again, I'm not trying to attack anybody here. I'm just saying it's out there. So there's a station in Oklahoma that's doing this. Kevin, have you seen this graphic?
Yeah, that's been going around. They're looking out 10 days and producing some sort of numerical value equivalent to a Torcon thing, the severe weather risk 10 days out. Some group, they're issuing their own warnings, and it goes out over phones and says, meteorologist X has issued a severe thunderstorm warning or whatever it is for X. And now we're getting these other things like I saw going around today that I guess they're, well, I have to go find it. Something that Mike Morgan put out saying the EF scale risk or something like. I'd have to go find it and see it again. But I think it is. We talked about that after. It's been long after that show where he came on, but I hear more and more that suggests that, especially in that market, it's become, if not more, at least equally about the show that's being put on, as opposed to the original mission and being responsible. It concerns me that the show is become more important, and I fear that kind of mentality will crawl out. If they're doing their own warnings now, that's going to crawl out to some other market or within that market, and then it'll crawl out, and the confusion factor really goes high. And Rick addressed this somewhere. He said that's going to cause problems. The emergency managers are going to say, well, why didn't you guys issue this warning, and why is my app going off and not this app, and so on and so forth. So the confusion factor, I'm afraid, is just going to rise based upon the competition level amongst the broadcasters. So that concerns me.
Yeah, and I have great fear that there's no hope here. All I can do is control what I've got here.
Right.
And I think here in my market, we have some good people, and we want to be on the same page. We want to use the same colors and have the same call to action statements. But we've only got so much power. If these owners come in here and say, all right, you got to start issuing your own warnings, they own this place. You have to, or else, we'd be fired. Yeah. And I see this whole thing going down the tubes, and it's very discouraging. Right. I will fight it. I will fight it until the day they fire me.
That brings up the question: did you download and install the Sinclair distributed emoji casts that were given to all your stations yet, James?
I don't even know what that. No.
No, there's
nothing about it.
Universal Sinclair distribution of emojis that they suggest you start using, and one of the template examples is that you put some sort of emoji on each day of your 7-day or however many you do. So you still have your little thunderstorm thing, but then you might have a frowny face underneath that, or you might have a happy face on a sunny day.
Oh, brother. I
get it. Emojis are cute, and to sprinkle it in once in a while for some fun. That's but the suggestion is that this is, they're not mandating it, but it was presented. So I'm surprised you didn't hear about that. Someone will be calling.
They were afraid to tell James that.
Yeah. No, they've gotten to where they kind of don't tell me stuff like that, which is good. Hey, can you go ahead and ask your question of Jim and Steve? That's a good question you have in the chat room there.
So yeah, from a viewer standpoint, obviously I'm not a meteorologist, but I pay attention now. Has there been a deliberate shift in the language used in warnings? Because I feel like I'm picking up on it a little, where you're just broadcasters are generally saying, oh, you know, whether it's a confirmed tornado or whether it's a radar indicated tornado, and I think that, or they're using some degree of what's the word? Not likelihood, or you know. It's not just there's a tornado or there's not. There's a degree of likelihood or risk implied in the language. Is that happening behind the scenes in the weather community?
Jim or Steve, y'all take that one and run with it.
You're both muted.
Okay, yeah. So I think, Kim, great question. You know, the Weather Service installed dual polarization radar in 2012-13. Came in Birmingham in 2012. I don't know when it came in Huntsville, and that allows us now to see more of the storm. And we've also gotten software that lets us look at the lower scan, getting about twice as much data. So at times, Kim, we're now seeing debris that's being lifted aloft from tornadoes. So it is actually at times confirming that we have a tornado on the ground. Now, it can be misused, and we got to be really careful. We still have a lot to learn. So the language has gotten more clear. And then I think the thing that we wanted to say is just not a tornado warning, but what we expect the impact to be, and with a severe thunderstorm based on winds and or hail. And so we've gotten a lot more specific in that messaging.
And can I add, I wonder if this is translating to what Kim is hearing or seeing, too, because there was some language change in some of the automated stuff that comes out, because on the National Weather Service chat, when a warning comes out now, there is a, you know, tornado probable or tornado possible, and then there's a percentage assigned to that, and that reads by in the warning message that comes in the chat. Now, those of us who are paying close attention, even to me paying close attention, when I see a big giant tornado in all caps go by, I got to go, wait a minute, and back up and process that. But we've been trying to train some of our people here to use NWS chat in the newsroom and whatnot so that they can monitor. But they see that and they go ding, 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 and that is bothersome to them. And I wonder if others are doing that. Maybe that translates to Kim, because that's given me pause on more than a few occasions. If you want to comment on that, Jim.
Well, I think I totally understand where you're coming from. So with the specific messages that go out with what you mentioned, the probability, the percentages and all that, that's supposedly for the media that you can parse out that and you can rebroadcast it very quickly. And it was put in a very specific way so software could decode that more easily. So is that what you're talking about, or are you talking about the actual message that you're struggling with?
No, I think that's it, that automated stuff. But as we all have multiple data points coming through, again, for me, just to see that out of the corner of my eye, I got to stop and go process that, especially there are a couple of instances where I've been in here alone and I'm sitting in front of the chat and trying to do radar and whatever else. And so it slows me down, but I think in other cases, if somebody just looks at that and sees a 70% next to the probability of a tornado, that maybe that message that's going out to the public then is, oh, wait a minute, here's a better chance for a tornado, which may or may not be true. I just wonder if it's translating through properly.
I guess I want to just clarify and say that from my standpoint, I seem to hear more qualifying language being used, and I think it's helpful. Implying the degree of certainty or uncertainty that, based on what you have to go on. And I think that that's helpful in communicating to the public that, there's a lot of factors here, and, in some cases you have a higher degree of certainty that there's something out there that need to take action about, versus other times where, So anyway, I think from my standpoint, it seems to have improved since April 27, 2011.
And while we are taking a pause here, Aubrey happens to be online with us, and because she has an 11 o'clock news, I know that she probably has a little bit of email because we haven't done one in a while here, so let's check that email inbox.
Letters. We get letters. We get stacks and stacks of letters.
Yeah, and I'm sorry to interrupt the discussion. Gosh, what a great discussion, guys. All right, so sifting through the email, we have John Wetter, who says, it would be great if you could mention in the podcast that on Friday we released a new version of the Spotter Network client for folks. He knows a lot of spotters and chasers, not to mislabel anyone, but a lot of those people do listen, so you can check them out on their Facebook page. So, John, we appreciate you sending that in. And another, let's see, John W. Wanted to thank me for helping him with trivia last week, because one of the questions was, what state does the Shenandoah River flow through? So, James, I think thanks to your shout out of the Shenandoah Valley, John was able to navigate that question in trivia. And also, he was asking a question that concerned him on that was brought up to a group about where is it safe to seek shelter under an overpass if a tornado was nearby, and about 25% of the people who responded answered yes, and he was kind of disturbed by that number. So he does live in New York, not as much of a concern as tornadoes, but getting the word out there that that is not a safe place to be. Chris Strange just wanted to note the retirement of Joe, is it Cupo? From WCSH 6 in Portland, Maine, after 37 years. The 37 years is at one station. So thank you, Chris. And Ben Humphrey actually had sent in a show suggestion about a topic on this very show that we are talking about. So we appreciate, Ben, you staying vigilant on that, and of course, it's been a great discussion from what I've heard on the show, and a little emotional. I'm glad I actually didn't have my camera up for a little bit, because listening to the stories was actually quite moving tonight. Jason Belk sent in a listener survey response, also got one in from Randy Payne. Randy says he's from Arlington, Texas, and says, I'd love to see you guys have someone on from the Fort Worth NWS office. I'd love to know more about their forecasting and dealing with severe weather in an urban area as well as general. Michael Behringer also sent in a listener survey response. I would love a show all about the science and basics of forecasting thunderstorms. What are some of the things I should be looking for to make an accurate forecast for general thunderstorms versus severe thunderstorms? So some great ideas. And we also had another guest suggestion from Kevin Hoagland, and Bill, I believe, got back to him on that. Wanted to have us have on a study whose main author, Karen McKinnon of the National Center for Atmospheric Research. Ken said that she sounded like an ideal guest. And Scott Courier sent in a listener survey response. And Derek Weber sent in a guest suggestion. Steve Norris, meteorologist at 105.7 The Hog, WIHG-FM, and meteorologist reporter at the city of Crossville, Tennessee. Crossville right down the road from my parents, and that is where the time changes from Eastern to Central Time on Interstate 40.
All right, good deal. So that's a good email segment. That's a lot of email. That's awesome.
That was a lot of emails. Yep, and you can send them all to email@weatherbrains.com.
All right, so I'm looking at the clock here, and Bill's got to scoot, and I've got to do the news here, but I don't want to stop this discussion because it's so good. Brian, can you stay for about 15 more minutes?
Sure.
Good. You're about to run the ship here, but we'll let you do picks of the week and everything else. But I've got to play Tony Rice in the astronomy report, so we're going to roll Tony's report. And there's a lot more to go, so hang on as WeatherBrains rolls along.
Looking beyond the atmosphere, here's Tony Rice with your astronomy outlook.
Literary fans, or just Google users, may have noticed a tribute to William Shakespeare this past Saturday, marking the 400th anniversary of his death. While English teachers in high schools and colleges worldwide continue to delight and sometimes torture students with the works of Shakespeare as required reading, math and science kids, you'll find something in there for you as well. Shakespeare lived during a time when the medieval world of astrology, magic, and superstition was being left behind, and the scientific revolution was just beginning. At the turn of the 17th century, when Shakespeare was most active, astronomy was a very big topic. The publication of On the Revolution of the Heavenly Spheres by Nicholas Copernicus back in 1543 had sparked much debate about Earth's place in the universe. A search of the complete works of Shakespeare finds over 100 references of the word stars alone. This new worldview clearly influenced his writings. In Act 5, Scene 1, Hamlet declares, "He whose grief conjures the wandering stars and makes them stand like wonder-wounded hearers." This references retrograde motion of the planets, central to the debate over whether the Sun or the Earth is at the center. Retrograde motion is an illusion created as Earth passes slower-moving outer planets, such as Mars or Jupiter. The planets slow down, appear to stand still in the night sky, before moving backwards day over day. You can see this for yourself. Throughout May and June, Mars continues its journey towards the constellation Libra. As June turns to July, Mars will appear to stand still, before apparently beginning moving backwards through Scorpius, Sagittarius, and finally Capricornus by June 2018, where the whole cycle will start over again. Shakespeare also made reference to the 44 BC comet, purportedly seen following the death of Julius Caesar, in his play of the same name. Some have said that Shakespeare may have been inspired to include comets by a sighting of Halley's Comet during his lifetime. This is unlikely. The plays were written about 10 years before the sighting of Halley's Comet in 1607. That's your Astronomy Outlook. Follow me at RTP Hokie for more spacey stuff like this.
All right, this is the part of the show where we do Picks of the Week, and again, Brian, I'm going to have to leave in a second. Aubrey's got to go do a newscast. Kevin, let's do a Trackie Awards. So, Kevin, go.
Awards. I have 3 nominees and then a winner, but I got to get back on my phone. First nominee, tracking milder temperatures today. Have a great weekend. Second nominee, get out your umbrella, Ella, We're tracking friendly showers this morning. Not quite sure what that is.
Oh,
Third
brother.
nominee, another fantastic day on tap. I'm tracking how long we stay warm and when showers return to the area. But the winner this week of the Trackie, and we have an intro which we don't have time for, but somebody, I can't remember his name, sent this in. We'll do that next week because there's a good intro for the Trackie Awards. This week's winner, we are tracking the forces of wetness and dryness on the weather map. See who wins on Channel X at noon.
Oh my gosh, who says that?
I'm not telling.
And for those that don't know, some bonehead consultant, they've told weather people to say the word track or tracking every other word in every sentence you say on social media and television. So we've come up with the Trackie Awards, and those were some fantastic ones here. In fact, here's the audio clip here.
Now, WeatherBrains is tracking the tracker. We track what the consultants track, so you can track along with us. Does that make sense? Here's WeatherBrains lead tracker, Kevin Selly.
All right.
Which is very good and clearly needs to be played at the beginning of the segment if the audio is paying attention.
I'm sorry. It's going down the tubes here. So, again, we're going to do, and Brian, be sure that everybody,
Yes.
Kim has to share where people can buy her book.
It's already on the webpage, so.
And I want Bill's pick of the week to be discussed by Jim and Steve. It involves both of their offices. My pick of the week, it's a little product that our friend John Gordon put out from his Weather Service office up in Kentucky. I thought that was a very interesting little product there. But at this point, Brian, the floor belongs to you because we have to go do some television.
Okay. And enjoy. Kevin, before you leave, has he already gone?
We got TV, man.
Kevin,
We got TV.
You can't leave. I have an important question.
Okay, go quick.
When did your son grow up?
Oh.
Holy mackerel. He's had a date, went to the prom and everything.
Yeah, well, he's referring to, I posted a picture of Matthew and his date. He's 15 now, but he and his date, Jacqueline Schaefer, went to the prom on Saturday night, and I posted a few pictures on Facebook. And you'll appreciate, Brian, that somebody actually in one of the comments somewhere said, what happened to that little boy with the little voice that used to do all those little WeatherBrains segments? And I said, you know what? That voice is long gone, baby.
Well, tell Matthew I said hello, and I'm sorry he's grown up.
Thank you for the acknowledgement. I appreciate it. See ya.
Okay, and Stephen and Jim, I think you know, and Kim, you know, we have picks of the week. So anything related to weather, even vaguely related to weather, we kind of skimp on the real requirement. It, intentionally is supposed to be a weather-related thing, but if it comes close, we're fine. Bill, why don't you go ahead with your pick of the week?
Yeah, Brian, mine is an exciting site that the National Weather Service in Birmingham and the National Weather Service in Huntsville put together as a joint effort, and it tells personal stories from the April 27, 2011 outbreak. So that's my pick of the week, and I'd love to hear Jim and Stephen chime in about creating that project.
Yeah, that's an interesting one because they're looking for interesting stories from April 27th, 2011. Is that right, Jim?
Yeah, absolutely, Brian. And yeah, it's the work of both offices, and it's a great place on both of our websites. You go to our main site, weather.gov, you click.
Oops.
Get the from April 27th and all that, and then a place for you to post pictures and also your story. We'd love people to join.
Oh, that's great. And Stephen, your office is participating in that also, or is it the same website or a different one?
Yes, we're also participating in it. It is actually on weather.gov/Huntsville. It's at the top news of the day. So yes, we're definitely asking for anybody who has a story to tell that they can go to that website and they can submit it either through email, Facebook, or Twitter. So it'd be a great opportunity for folks to share their stories. So yeah, I would say that's my pick of the week too.
Okay, all right. And Aubrey, you have a pick? I think you have a pick because you already sent it to me.
Yes, mine is the NCWeb incident site for fires, wildfires. Just an update on the Shenandoah National Park. We don't usually get wildfires this large. In this area, it is now the second largest wildfire in the national park. So some updates, of course, a good site for any wildfire across the country.
Yeah. Now that's the second largest in the Shenandoah National Park, is that right?
National Park, yep. The largest was in 2000, and it was over 25,000 acres. And now this one is up to over 10,000. But it is burning in an area that needs to burn.
That's a little natural cleansing of the forest land there. Yeah,
yeah, it's away from structures. It's beneficial if it burns.
All right, I'll mention that Kevin had one since he's off doing television there. It has to do with Turn Around, Don't Drown, and it's a very interesting website of a truck trying to drive through the water and getting swept off, as you might expect. And James has already told you his, and let's see, who else did we have? Nate Johnson sent one in, has to do with ASCII weather art. And mine I've used before, but I was looking through the SPC's WCM page, and the page is updated from time to time, no regular basis, but they had a 25-year tornado averages, and I think that is kind of interesting since most of us go back all the way to 1950 for tornado averages, and in the early 50s and into the early 60s, I'm not sure that we were getting all the reports. Not sure we get all the reports even today. So, Jim and Stephen, I guess you want to use your picks as the link to the websites. Is that right?
Steve, yeah.
Okay.
Weather.gov, and then you can get there. But actually, my other pick, if I could have another one, was
sure.
We're getting away from all caps.
Yeah, we highlighted that recently too.
Yeah.
Okay, and Kim.
So I'm going to abstain from talking about Purple Rain. But
you are going to talk about one of your favorite hobbies.
Yes. So one of my favorite events that happens this year has to do with April 27th, and it's Bo Bikes Bama. Bo Jackson, the greatest athlete of all time, according to ESPN, has a charity bike ride through Alabama right around the anniversary of April 27th. And initially, he did it to raise money for tornado relief. And now that we're this far out, the money's still going to the governor's relief fund, but now it's going to the building of community storm shelters. And what is so cool about this ride is you do not have to wear Lycra and be a rider of a fancy bike to do it. There's a 20-mile fun ride, and my son, who is 8 years old, is going to do the 20-mile ride.
All right.
The other thing that's cool is that celebrities who are not cyclists show up. They're all Bo Jackson's friends. So Lance Armstrong has come several years. I think he's coming again this year. Peekaboo Street has come in the past. Ken Griffey Jr. Last year, the Boz, Brian Bosworth. And what's cool is that they're kind of out of their element on a bike, and so they're like everyone else. But anyway, Bo is we're hoping to top the $1 million mark this year. So you can go to bobikespama.com and join the ride. It's only $40 to ride the 20-mile ride, and it all goes to building storm shelters for community.
And the ride starts in Auburn, is that right?
Yep, it starts and ends in Auburn. There's a great after party. There's rest stops along the way, great food, lots of fun.
All righty. Well, and you're going to ride with your son?
Yep.
All right. Fabulous.
20 this year.
Family affair.
Yep.
All right. Wow, I am not James Spann, and this is the first time I've had to perform the hosting duties. Does it show very much here? Does anybody else have anything that they would like to kind of wrap up with? Go around the horn here. Aubrey is doing TV. Bill Murray, you have anything you want to wrap up, like coming shows?
Come back to me, Brian, and I'll do that.
Okay, all right. Jim, you're next on my little list of icons across here.
Yeah,
pictures.
Appreciate you guys letting me come on today and talk about this, and we're going to continue to work to improve.
Can't ask for anything more than that. And Stephen, you're next on my list. So
we really appreciate y'all engaging both Birmingham and Huntsville with this. This is the first time I've ever done it, and so I really appreciate y'all taking the time to remember the April 27th event for one, and also engage us on how our offices were impacted and what we're kind of thinking, what the things that we've learned from. Really appreciate y'all doing that.
Well, you're welcome. By the way, could I clarify one point with you?
Sure.
You mentioned that the office was without power for 6 days, but you have emergency generators, so the office was still operating. Isn't that correct?
Yes, that's correct. I was stating that pretty much we were without commercial power.
Right. Well, and you know how it is. A lot of people, well, I'm sure there are lots of folks out there don't realize the immensity of the generators. Like when we were building the Birmingham office, they put the generator in place and then built the building for the generator around it after it was in place. So they're pretty big horsepower kinds of huge engines, and they do a great job. But sometimes, as you're saying, they have to run for 6 days to keep everything running at the National Weather Service offices. So I just wanted to clarify that commercial power was out, but you all were still running. So that's
correct.
Great.
That is correct.
Okay, Bill, I think that brings around to you because I don't see anybody else here. James is pointing at me, but that's his picture. So.
Yeah, Brian. Next week we've got Tom Nizil from the Weather Channel coming on to talk. That'll be a lot of fun. Eric Berger from Ars Technica will be talking about the future of forecasting on the 9th. Jeff Medlin from the National Weather Service in Mobile will be talking about rip currents on the 16th.
Ah, great topic.
And then we'll probably shoehorn in our friend Greg Carbon on the 23rd. He was originally scheduled for tonight, but we thought that this event merited a special show, so we at the last minute invited Jim and the folks from Huntsville. We're glad Stephen could join us, and Brian suggested that we have, or James suggested that we have Kim, and Brian made it happen, and so it made for a great show tonight. And then we'll end May, Brian, on the 31st with a special show on Tuesday, sort of missing Memorial Day by one day, and inviting Jason Samenow from the Capital Weather Gang and the Washington Post to join us.
Wow, some great shows coming up. Bill is our official booking officer. That doesn't mean he gets booked by the police. It means he books our guests. Clarify that. Kim, thank you so much for accepting our invitation at the last minute. I think your perspective adds a great deal to what it is meteorologists are doing in trying to save lives and keep people safe. So thank you.
Well, thanks for everything that y'all do to, you care so much and work so hard to keep people safe. And I just want to say I have microphone envy, Brian.
Well, I mean, it's just trying to keep up with James Spann. That's all it is. He always complained about the price of the Heil. I didn't think it was all that expensive, but anyway, he's cheaper than I am. That's all I can say. Well, with that, we'll thank everybody once again for taking the time to be with us. As you can tell, I am not James Spann. I have entirely too much hair. And we will be back again with the next episode. That should be number 537, if I'm counting correctly, with next week. Again, we record WeatherBrains typically on a Monday evening, 8:30 Central Time, 9:30 Eastern Time, I think. And we appreciate comments, especially from our viewers and listeners. However you get the show, we'd like to hear your comments, good, bad, or indifferent. So thank you so much. Have a great evening, and Godspeed. Thank you, people. Appreciate it. And Jim, I think that Steven's pipe outdoes yours. You got to put in for more bandwidth there, Jim.
He's closer to the router.
That's true. That's true. Is it just down the street, Steven?
Oh no, I'm on a UAH computer, so that means I'm actually on the UAH network.
Oh, wow.
So, but our other PCs, they're kind of tunneling into it, so they're a little bit faster than the typical Weather Service network. But this one has the highest bandwidth.
Well, we won't ask you for the specs because then we'll all have bandwidth envy there.
You should go steal some Wi-Fi from there, Brian. That sounds like the place to do
absolutely. I should. I learned from the best, James Spann. Well, thank you all. I appreciate that.
All right. Good night, everybody.
All right. Good night.
Yeah, we were chasing in Kansas and pulled up outside of Days Inn to steal their internet. This would have been 2004, before people had passwords on their hotel internet. And so we pulled up outside, and Gene Rode and I were downloading as much as we could. And this little lady looks out the window from the office and sees us, and she closes the curtain, and all of a sudden the internet was turned completely off.
It's funny your experience should be at a Days Inn, because my first experience stealing Wi-Fi was with James. I was driving the Chaser. He said, pull into this Days Inn. I didn't realize what he was doing. I'm just following orders of my boss, really. And then he said, pull up here close to the building, but keep the engine running. I said, what? He said, I guess we have to make a quick escape. So I learned from the best.
Oh, great.
Thank you, Bill. See you next week.
Bye, Brian.
Bye.
Hello. Looks like we're done. Thank you guys for watching. We'll be up on Song of the Night over on Periscope here in just a second. So we'll see you guys next week. Bye-bye.